Today we're talking about what it looks like for you to properly recruit, train, and empower your volunteer team so you have a team that is thoroughly equipped and that will want to stay with you long term. What does that look like? You ready to learn? Get ready, it's time.
You're listening to the Church Digital Sidekick Podcast, part of the TCD Podcast Network.
Hey, heroes, my name is Tom Pound, and this is the Church Digital Sidekick Podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about how you can do ministry more effectively in this very digital and online world. And whether you're a student minister, whether you're an executive minister, whether you're a digital minister, no matter what ministry position you are in, volunteer recruitment, training, and empowering has always been a little bit of a challenge. We never have enough volunteers to help us in our ministries. So what does it look like for you to recruit, train, and empower them now so that you can have a successful team that is working hard and doing ministry the right way as a team? Today I've got my friend Nick Blevins on. He is a next-gen pastor up near me. He's up near Baltimore, Maryland. But he's been doing ministry for a really long time, and he just actually came out with this new book, The Volunteer Playbook, and he also works with Ministry Boost as well as his church, but talking about how you can successfully recruit, train, and empower volunteer team members. It's a great conversation. It's awesome having him on there because he's had lots of experience with this, and he's had a lot of experience working with other churches doing this and doing this successfully. So we talk about that today and what that looked like for you in your church. But before we do that, I want to highlight theChurch.digital. At theChurch.digital, we have ministers on there, people who are in the trenches, who are coaching, who are running cohorts, who are writing blog posts, doing podcasts about how you can do ministry in this metaverse world, digital world, online world. If you are doing online ministry in any capacity, you need to check out theChurch.digital because you're going to get encouragement, you're going to be equipped, and you're going to be trained on how to do this the right way. So we've got lots of experience, lots of encouragement, and I would love for you to check out theChurch.digital today so you can take your online ministry, digital ministry, digital metaverse ministry to that next level today. So again, check out theChurch.digital. All right, so without any further ado, let's get into the podcast interview with Nick Blevins right now. All right, with me right now is my friend Nick Blevins. Nick, how are you?
I'm doing well, ready for summer here in our parts of the country where it's getting warmer like that.
Yes, it is getting warmer. I'm in shorts and I've got a short sleeve shirt. It's a little chilly this morning, but knowing that it's going to get warmer during the day, I'm good with.
Yep, same here.
Nick, what's your favorite season of the year?
It is summer.
Oh,
I could almost say fall because I love football so much. So pro football comes back on. I'm from the Baltimore area. I'm a Ravens fan, but still summer. I love ocean, water. Like that's probably my top thing. So certainly summer is my favorite season.
That's awesome. So I'm assuming you must be really happy that Lamar Jackson re-signed with the Ravens.
I am really happy because at least it's settled. You know what I mean? Like that was the other thing. It's like, I mean, I did want him to sign, but the other part was like, you know, the questions and who's going to be playing and what's happening. And yeah, so I'm just glad it's like, that's done. We can just finally get on to a season.
If he would not have re-signed, I think their contender status would have dropped dramatically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, the Ravens got a great organization, so I think they're going to be good regardless, but that definitely does help. All right, Nick. Well, we're not going to talk about summer or even football. We're here to talk about volunteers. But before we get into that, I just wanted you to just reintroduce yourself. You've been on the podcast before, but not for a while. So share who you are and what you do.
Yeah, Nick Blevins. I am on staff at a church here north of Baltimore, Maryland called Community Christian Church. I'm the next gen pastor here. Also oversee our operations stuff. And it was a church plant that started 17 years ago with the help of a bunch of churches, including one that you're at, right? Because your church has been a part. How many churches have you all helped start now? 100? Over 100?
Well, no, we're over 300. We've helped.
Oh my gosh, that's right. Yeah, because of the passion for planting and some of that stuff. Yeah, so we're another church on your list of 300, and then have been fortunate to even partner with you to help launch other churches, which has just been really cool for this area that we live in, the Baltimore, D.C. area. Mm-hmm. That's been a lot of fun. So I've been here since we started. It started as the kids pastor, moved into the next gen pastor role about 12 years ago. and been doing that. And then on the side, some friends and I started Ministry Boost to help train church leaders, mostly kids and student pastors. And predominantly, the thing we probably help with the most is volunteers. So, what we're talking about today, not surprisingly, but that's the thing people, want to work on the most or need the most help with or whatever. And so that's kind of how that's turned out. And then also started working with Slingshot a little bit last year to help churches hire staff, most kids and student pastor staff. So yeah, I got 3 kids, 10, 7, and 4, getting out of school here soon, ready for summer. It's another reason I love summer because we, family trips and vacations and more time with the kids and all that stuff.
Do you guys go to the beach?
We do. We've had summers where we don't. In fact, I think last year was one of those. And I hate those summers, because we planned family trips and we went different places, which was fun. Like went to Pigeon Forge last year and did Dollywood and like all that stuff. And but for me, loving the beach, that was not one of the trips, and that was very sad.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did this year. We're going to Myrtle Beach this year.
Nice. We always go up to Ocean City, Maryland, and that's a place I've grown up going to, and then my girls and I go up there as well. And it's funny because my girls are a little bit older than yours, and so taking my girls to the beach when they were younger, you have to watch them like a hawk. Like you have
Oh my
to
gosh.
keep an eye
Yeah.
on. The last 2 or 3 years, I've been at peace. Like they'll go down to the water, I won't care. Like I don't have to watch them and make sure that they're not getting pulled under or anything like that. So that's been really kind of cool for me. So
Yeah, it is. It's stressful. My wife and I, we went to the beach with the kids. It was just us. It wasn't any of our extended family. We got 3 kids. This was last year. And I'm in the water. Jennifer's on shore. The kids had gone, the 2 older ones had gone down to like dig and sand somewhere. And when our daughter, our middle one, walks back, so she's by herself at this point. Now she's only, I don't know, 40 feet from where Jennifer is, but she doesn't see her and keeps walking. So I'm in the water. I can see what's happening, but she freaks out because she walks, and then other people are freaking out because Isaac doesn't know where she is. And it's like,
yes.
everybody calm down. She walked past, but I get it. So it's a lot to handle. It's definitely stressful.
Yes. One day you'll be like me, just relaxing on the beach and not a care in
Just
the world.
carefree. Yeah.
Right? Yes. So all right. So let's talk about volunteers because volunteers always been an issue within the church. It's always been
Sure.
something that people are constantly looking for. And I think then the pandemic came and that kind of squashed a lot of things, but also gave us some new opportunities as well. And so that's why I think your book is very timely right now. It's called The Volunteer Playbook, and we're going to include the links in the show notes. But talk to me a little bit about why you chose to write this book.
Yeah, actually, and I started it 10 years ago, and the reason I always remember is because Isaac, our oldest, was born. I started it a few weeks after he was born in December of 2012, and the idea then, in my mind, I had been doing vocational ministry stuff for almost 10 years there. If you count when I was a volunteer leading at my home church is about 10 years, and I had learned so much from other books, from other church leaders, and so many things that helped our church. I mean, I could point to, and some of those stories are in the book, but times when like I was not doing it right, but then I learned this thing and implemented it, and that helped everything. And so in my mind, I thought, I want to write a book that's about leading volunteers. That's kind of like a from the ground up. How would you build it, the right way, in a healthy way? And now it's changed a little bit since then because I think my idea was probably too boring originally. It was kind of like, and some of that stuff is in the book, like the whole section on build your foundation, what's your mission, your vision, your strategy. That was sort of like the core idea of it. And then with the idea of thinking that there's so many things that impact volunteerism in a church, a lot of times we think it's just one thing, like we just need an announcements from stage, or we just need a ministry fair in the lobby or whatever. But the truth is there's hundreds of factors that impact volunteerism. And so my thought was in the book, what if I wrote a book where you kind of build it healthy from the ground up and address, most of those factors? The book still turned out that way, but with recruiting being such a need and
Yeah.
just needing more volunteers and how that messes up everything else. Like if you don't have enough volunteers, you usually don't even have time to work on anything else, on your ministry. So kind of redesign it where recruiting is the first section. So you can get that going, get some new volunteers in, and then we could turn our attention to building the foundation, building a good structure, leading volunteers and all that stuff. So wrote it mostly to help church leaders, you're always going to need to recruit volunteers. There's no version of I've got 100% and now I'm set for the rest of my life or whatever. Um, but also don't have to have 60% and scramble and always be stressed and asking for help and plugging a bunch of holes and doing everything yourself like that. That is the reality for a lot of us. It's in vocational ministry, but it doesn't have to be for the long haul. There's always seasons that are tough,
Yeah.
like you just get enough volunteers and now your church is adding a campus or a service or, something like that. Um, or, somebody, a wave of people step down. So that always happens, but you can have like a healthy, sustainable
Yeah.
team. And so that was my goal in writing the book. And I had it's self-published. There's no editor. So there's no editor to say, hey, these chapters are too boring or we don't need these. Or so it's all in there. I tried to actually somebody asked me recently, how much do you talk about retention in there? I was like, you know what? That's actually a topic that I don't hit a ton. Like in my mind, if you implement all the stuff in the book, you will retain volunteers more, but there's other good books on that, so I thought like, let me write this about building a healthy volunteer culture.
Yeah, see, I think that's really important because I think we spend so much time on the recruiting aspect of it, but then we also miss opportunities to talk about how we can retain them, and
Hmm.
how we can. I liked how you said the culture. You create a great culture in there. You won't have to
Hmm.
worry about retaining them because they're naturally just going to want to stay. So, what do you say though to someone who will say, Tom, if you would just announce my volunteer need on stage, I
Yeah.
will have tons of volunteers because that's what I
Yeah.
always get. Like, just announce it on stage, and I'm going to have 1,000 people sign up immediately.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is like, one, if you were sitting in there, are you sitting there thinking, I want to give more of my time away? I hope somebody asks me today, from a stage, or if you went to your, I don't know, kids sports game, like, are you sitting in the crowd thinking, I hope they ask for volunteers right now while I'm out here? Like, you're probably not. And the other thing is most of us who've done that, we've all probably had that experience where you announce it from stage. And that's not bad. In fact, that's a thing I think is a good strategy,
Yeah.
but only once you've put in a better foundation for recruiting. But the harsh reality of recruiting from stage is a lot of people say yes and they don't follow through. So you might, for every 10 people who say yes and check a box or raise their hand, you might only get like 3 of them or 4,
Mhm.
which, you're thinking that's 3 or 4 I didn't have
Yeah.
last week. So like that'd be fine. And so, but there is a better way. There's a few better ways. And I think if you use some of the better ways where you can kind of recruit all the time and use a system, then when you do ask from stage, you now have a better system to actually follow up with them and get them onboarded and all of that. And so that's when I think it can work. And because one of the best times to recruit from stage is when clear need meets clear vision. And so I mean, people have probably heard people say before, don't recruit from stage because it sounds desperate. And that's true. It would sound desperate if that's how you worded it. Like, hey,
Yes.
we need help with our digital team. It's just awful. Have you seen our Instagram? It's terrible. Is anybody good at that? Because it's just crazy. Like that would sound desperate. But if you talked about the opportunity and then painted a picture of it, like, hey, our church is reaching 1,000 people in our region, or more than 1,000. Let's say we have an average of 1,000 attendance, and we're reaching thousands of people in this area. But did you know that there are, 1.2 million people that live within 20 minutes of New Life? And we're starting to connect with them more online, which is just great. Our YouTube channel, you and I were talking about your YouTube channel at your church, and you just paint a picture of like how you could reach them. Did you know that more and more people are actually checking the church out online before they come? They're reading reviews like it's a restaurant. Like, I don't know if you've seen that, Tom, but that's been a thing at our church.
Yeah.
People will say like, I read reviews, like it's yelp.com or whatever. And so like if you painted that vision with the need and you were very specific, like we're looking for this, and then for other leaders, if it's children's ministry or student ministry or whatever, maybe you're painting that picture with vision and that need. Like, I know our best times recruiting from the stage have been when we launched a service,
Mm.
because it's very clear that there's a need. Anybody, you don't even have to understand how anything works in church, and you can understand that if you're adding a service, you need more people,
Yeah.
right? And because most people walk around our church and you think everything looks fine, like children's ministry must be fine, like, because it seems like it runs well. Youth ministry, I don't even see. It's on Sunday nights, it's probably fine. I drop my kid off, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Guest services, whatever. I don't play an instrument, so I can't be in the band. And so most attenders will look around and think, looks like everything's good.
Yeah.
And so when you can paint that clear need, but with a clear vision, I think it's good. I just think I view a stage announcement thing as kind of like a once a year type of play. Maybe twice at the most, once or twice a year, and do it strategically. You can get more out of it, but you still need another way to recruit to get
Yeah.
the bulk of your volunteers.
Yeah, I think that's important. You hit on something earlier, just a minute ago, where you're talking about your overall strategy of recruiting, constantly recruiting. I think sometimes we rely too much on one, a stage announcement, but then two, serving Sunday or something like that, where it
Yeah, yeah.
happens once a year. But you're talking about constantly recruiting. What does that look like for you? What do you mean there?
Yeah, and then that's probably the core of the book. Like if all you did was read the 2 or 3 chapters about that, you'd probably
No,
get
we want
the
them to
most
read it all. We want them to read it
the
all.
most value out of it. And the in the book it goes into more detail, but essentially one of the method that I teach in the book, it's also what we teach at Ministry Boost in some of our courses, is to use a 5-part framework, and you could make up your own framework. But the idea, there are probably the two big ideas behind it is you need to spend time every week intentionally. Most church leaders, if you ask them how much time they spend recruiting volunteers every week, they'll tell you 0 or 1 hour a week, something like that. I know because I ask this question a lot, in different settings. And so if you're only spending 0 hours, obviously you're not going to have any impact. If you're spending 1 hour, I mean, that's better than most church leaders. But so you need to spend time intentionally, especially on the front end if you're just starting this. And then the other thing is you do need some type of strategy. And part of that is so that you can walk people through something step by step. Like it's so hard for people. I imagine, like, again, take student ministry as the example. You're recruiting and you're talking to somebody in the lobby and it's like, "Hey, Tom, how you doing? I was wondering if," and then, like, you're not serving, you've been coming to the church for a couple years. "Tom, I was wondering if you'd like to serve in student ministry. It's 2.5 hours a week for about 35 weeks a year. And then we do 2 trips. So you're going to take off vacation. There's about a week long. We'd love for you to show up at some student games, and plays and musicals. It's probably another 40 hours a year, something like that. Tom, what do you think?" Like, a lot of people aren't saying yes to that, right?
Right.
But if you can get them to say yes to a smaller step and then yes to another smaller step, and then you get them thinking about it, and now you can paint a picture of the vision. I mean, at some point, you do have to present reality. Like, here's the expectation. It is a big commitment. And I use student ministry because it's typically one of the most committed volunteer roles in the church. A lot easier, obviously, to get somebody to say yes to like a once a month
Yeah.
role serving on a team during one service or something like that. But you need some kind of steps that you can invite them to, that are easier. In the marketing world, they call this the yes ladder. Like when somebody's trying to sell you something. Now, you may have experienced this, but without realizing you've experienced it. But they want you to say yes to clicking on that before you say yes to watching this free thing, before you say yes to selling this. And that's not, I mean, it could be used for evil, you know what I mean? But that's not the goal. The goal is we're all just wired to, avoid what's confusing, or certainly, and I think certain since pandemic, even more, we're wired to avoid more commitment, quite honestly. I think we got a taste of a different life during pandemic where we weren't as busy and things like that. And I think people even now still have that in them. And so the framework just teaches, how do you reach out to a huge group of people, more than you probably think, and to recruit the volunteers you need, invite them to a conversation. From there, invite them to a volunteer orientation. And I don't mean orientation like you've already said yes, and let me show you what it's like. More like a sneak peek or like a preview or like a, info
Mhm.
meeting. And at there, you cast the vision and you really sell it. Like, here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it. This matters. I mean, you're not saying it this way, but the way I talk about it is you're basically trying to get somebody to see volunteering at church as one of their top 5 priorities in their life. And that's okay, because serving is a part of discipleship and our faith. And so, yeah, it shouldn't be number 1, probably not number 2, but it's up there. It's
Yeah.
4 or 5, 3, 4 or 5. So it should be like, I think of my own life. And this sounds weird, but it's like, should serving at church be more important than, I don't know, the lawn that I want at my house, or like my kids' soccer uh, club, or whatever. I need to show up in all those things. But if I'm not serving, man, that's a whole piece of my faith that's not there. So I think we can be bold about it. and invite people to take that step. But it's hard to do that right away, first conversation in the lobby. So you get them to say yes to this and then invite them to an orientation.
Yeah, I do that. That's awesome. And as you were sharing, I was thinking of two stories I know of. Like, one is we had a student minister or a student ministry volunteer who was stopped out. He had been serving for about 7 years, and he stopped about 2 years ago. But at the very end, when we were kind of recognizing him, honoring him, he said, you know, the youth minister before me, he said he just asked me to come to a youth group night and just help with that youth group night. And then that turned into something else, which turned into something else, which again, to talk to what you talked about with that yes ladder. And they committed to something small, and then they said yes to more and more things. And he served for over 7 years. It was fantastic. He was a great volunteer. But I also was thinking about a chat host, because with online ministry, you have the chat host on Sunday mornings. And what I always do with the chat host is I'm on there all the time as the online minister, and I see different people chatting throughout the different services. And as they're chatting, I am paying attention to them, and I'm thinking, okay, this one seems really solid. This one seems like they have a strong faith. This one seems like they are really engaged in this and like to do this. I'm going to reach out to them, and I would reach out to them and say, hey, it's awesome having you in the chat room. Have you ever thought about being one of our chat hosts? And we kind of talk about what that looks like. And I cast the vision. I share about the opportunity that we have. And again, it falls in line with your stuff about always be looking out and always be examining what's around you and for the opportunities of people serving.
Yeah, and I mean the best way to recruit is a little bit like that, where like there's some kind of connection, even if you don't know them, but they've been showing up consistently as a chat host, and there's an investment there already, right? That like makes a lot of sense. That's why it's easier to recruit, a parent to serve in student ministry if you've seen them drop off their kids for 3 years in a row. I mean, like they're just used to coming out and picking up. Now
Yeah.
they may not want to serve and actually be there and give the time, but again, they're more likely probably than that person you don't even know that you haven't even talked to in the lobby or whatever that looks like. But and so that is really good. And you only get so many of those people, to recruit from those people, So that's why in the book, one of the things we talk about is how do you build a prospect list that is a lot larger than the number of volunteers you need, and then and full of people that you don't even know, so that you can start a conversation with them. It won't be as easy to get them to say yes as it would be like that person that was already the chat host.
Yeah.
But you still, if you reach out to enough of them, get enough no's, you'll get a yes.
Yeah.
Which that's the other thing people are afraid of. You don't want to be rejected. So that's why we don't ask a lot of people. But the good thing is, like the framework we teach in the book, a lot of the rejections, so to speak, are just people not replying to emails or texts. And that doesn't feel quite as bad as no, Tom. No, I'm not going to serve as a chat host.
And I'm going to punch you in the face. Yeah, no. Well, and again, you never fully know unless you make the ask. Who knows? Maybe a no that in your mind will be a yes in someone else's mind. So you never know. Okay, I want to talk about this though, because I think it's really important, because once you get them in the door, once you get them in, you also talk about training and empowering them, because I think this is really important, because it goes along with the retention down the road. If you're not training them regularly, if you're not empowering them, they are going to leave because they feel like, oh, I'm just a warm body. I'm not needed here. Talk to me a little bit about that in your book, and what you talk about with training and empowering, and why it's so important.
Yeah, I remember reading the book Drive years ago from Daniel Pink. It was Drive. The subtitle was The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, I think. It was based on a study of people at their job and what motivates them. And you would think the answers would be like money, salary, career advancement and achievement, and those were absolutely factors. But what they learned from the study was those were factors to a point where like they just needed salary within at a certain level. You know what I mean? They just wanted some career advancement opportunities. It wasn't like, and sure, there's certain people where that's what it's all about for them, but the majority of the audience, there were three things that drove them: autonomy, like I can operate without being micromanaged and have some independence; mastery, I want to get really good at what I do; and purpose, I want to know that what I'm doing matters and makes a difference. And so in the church world, we already have the purpose. We got the best purpose in the world, most important purpose in the world. We need to be careful to always share that. But then there's that mastery one. So I think training and empowering, that's really one and two, right? Empowering, so I have autonomy, and then training so I have some mastery. So that's innate desires in all of us, and I think that's true even in church volunteer roles. And even going back to empowering, if you can give people leadership responsibilities and that's something that they love, then they're going to want to do that even more. That's going to make them want to stick longer term because they have a bigger investment in it now. Not everybody wants to be a leader, so some people are like, I don't care. But some people, that is something they want to do. It's kind of like that career advancement idea. Some people just want to advance just to advance, feel like they're doing better at their job and make more money. Some people, though, it is about leadership, and so they want to have a voice and be a leader in the organization.
Yeah. No, I agree. I've seen a number of volunteers at times leave, and some of them have said, because I don't feel needed. I don't feel like I'm really serving here. I'm just here to do this. And they don't get the vision, and that's my fault, because I'm not investing in them. I'm not encouraging them. I'm not challenging them to take steps in their volunteer leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of times to give people volunteer leadership opportunities, sometimes it's obvious because like you might have so many volunteers that you really need to create like a structure where some volunteers lead other volunteers. Sometimes it's not obvious, but you should create it just for the sole reason of giving somebody that, like, you may not need a team. Like, think about host, online chat host. Somebody could be leading like six of those, and you can lead them all by yourself. There's six of them, no big deal.
Hmm.
But why not give one of them the responsibility of leading all the others? and
Yeah.
and start to build that, right? And now they're the ones leading them and communicate. You're communicating with the one, and they're communicating with the other five, and you've started to create a structure even early on. You know what I mean? Where you can lead through them, and usually what that means is though, usually it gets better because they can actually focus more time on that specific thing than you can, and then two, it frees up some time to pour into other areas.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, dude, I want people to buy this book, and we're going to talk about that where they can buy it in a second. But just wrapping up this, what would you encourage the person right now listening to the podcast, and they're really frustrated, and they're just trying to figure out, where do I get started? How would you encourage them today?
Yeah, I would say you got to start recruiting by spending time each week. And that's what's hard. Like if you're frustrating, if you're underwater, if you're plugging holes, you're certainly not thinking, how do I spend 4 more hours in a week? Right. And that's the thing that I never want to be, I don't know, coy about like what's actually required to recruit, like on a shoot straight to build, especially some of the things that you would need to build probably to help recruit volunteers. I mentioned in orientation. These are things that you might have to create that might not exist, or maybe you need to recreate them, and that takes time. So my encouragement would be, know that you got to spend some more time here over the next month or two recruiting, building this up. Use some kind of a framework, get my book and use those 5 steps. Get one of our course, Volunteer Boost with Ministry Boost, is essentially this. It's for how to recruit. It's a 28-day challenge to recruit, but I'm not the only one. There's other books that talk about recruiting. Like, use some type of system. And the main concept of what I teach in the book is you're reaching out to a bunch of prospects who could serve, inviting them to a conversation, inviting them to an orientation, and then that's, essentially how you're going to try to get them to serve. Run that play. It'll take you more time over the next month or two, but then it'll save you time down the road because you'll recruit some volunteers. They'll free up some time in your schedule. So and the other encouragement I would say is, and we don't do this enough, is make sure you, if you can, stop or pause some of the things you're currently doing to make time, even if it's just temporarily for a month or two. Like, and it's hard, I know most of the things, like, stop what? Like, I have to do everything I'm doing. Why would I do it? But the reality is you really don't, if you, and there's some serious things you could stop for. I mean, I'm not saying you would do this, but like, for example, what if like in your, with your online, with online services and chat, what if you didn't have chat hosts for a month? Like that wouldn't be great. I'm not saying that's an extreme example. It's probably not what you're going to go to, but it's an extreme example of what you could stop or pause just to free up some time. Now, the easier example usually is, can I get out of certain meetings for a month? Right? Something like that. Just not forever. But can I get out of certain meetings for a month? Are there some additional things we're doing? Like your church is doing online devotionals, right? And that's awesome. It'd be easy though, if that, I mean, it's probably not taking up that much time and you got a team doing it. But if that was all you and you were spending 2 hours a week on it, that would be an easy yes to say, hey, we're going to pause these. for a month. We still want you, and doing devotionals, investing time with God. The Bible app is an excellent place for that. Here's what I recommend: join here, read it along with everybody else for the next 2 months, and then you save 2 hours a week for 2 months, and then you do this and come back, turn it back on, get back to doing devotionals again. So if you can do that, put that time in, you're gonna have, it's not like it's like this guarantee, that you're gonna recruit volunteers, but man, I've seen it work in so many different settings. But it's about putting the time in and having a good framework.
Yeah, I agree. As you were talking, it's just all about intentionality. I mean, you're not going to stumble upon, well, you may get the random volunteer that comes around and you stumble upon that person. But the reality is, if you want more volunteers, you have to make time for more volunteers. And I like what you're talking about, creating that framework, saying no to some things, because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. But also,
Hmm.
when you say no to something, you could be freeing up more of that time as
Yeah.
well. So it's good to say no sometimes. And so if you want to get out of meetings, talk to your boss about that. But
Yep.
but
Yep.
but there are things that you could probably do to free up some time. Nick, where would people buy this book, or where would they get it?
Volunteerplaybook.com is the best place to go. It just redirects to a page on my blog. And the reason that probably the best place is it just links to Amazon, which, you can go there. There's
Yeah.
the print, Kindle, and Audible. It's on Audible.
No.
If you like to listen to books though, if you get the print or the Kindle copy, you can get an audio version for free. It's just
Oh,
in the form of a private podcast kind of thing you subscribe to. So if people like that, some people I know, like they're like me and they use Audible, and so they just like to quickly just use a credit, which is fine. But you can get it free, and it's kind of like a 2 for 1 if you get one of the other versions. But the other reason I say go to volunteerplaybook.com is there's free resources with every chapter. And if they're even without buying the book, actually, you can get access to those and different documents and files and PDFs and things that we use to do what I talk about in the book.
are you the voice of the book that is read, or is somebody else the voice?
I am the voice of it. And
Yes.
Tom, it was a challenge. Oh my gosh. Like, you and I've done podcasts for a long time. We've got gear, you're right, you got mics and
Yeah.
software used to whatever. The recording specifications for Audible are so tight, so
Wow.
crazy. Like you gotta be this quiet, but not too quiet, this loud, but not too loud, like all those things.
Wow.
And it was hard. Actually, the biggest challenge was I needed it to be louder to meet their minimum floor
Okay.
and which is pretty loud actually, like which I get because then you can scale it down and have this clear thing. It also couldn't be too quiet. So it was interesting, man. It took way longer than I thought just to get that right. And then I crammed to record it in the end. But it's me. It's me recording it. I thought, I'm doing a podcast. Might as well record my own audio book. Here's the other like behind the scenes thing. I did not get the final round of edits done, or not edits, proofreading done after I finished. So this was round 3 now, and for various reasons. It's because I was behind, and I didn't feel like I could go back to my editor 8 months later and get that final round. And so in my head, I thought if I read it, I'll catch all the remaining errors. And that was sort of true. I still missed a few even after that, but I caught like 35. And that was after 3 rounds of edits,
Wow.
a bunch of rounds of formatting. Just shows you. And even if you get it now, I guarantee you'll find some mistakes in there. It's hilarious how hard that is and how easy it is to make those.
The thought of reading my own book or manuscript of some sort, it just intimidates me so much. I would be so terrible at it. I would 100% would be so terrible at it.
It's not. Well, I don't want to say it's not fun. It is not. In some ways, it's not fun. The way I looked at it though is like I'm teaching it, so that's where it was fun. Like I felt like I was doing one of my courses. It's like I'm reading it, and I'm probably not the most dynamic person anyway, but I'm trying to view it that way so that as the listener listens,
Yeah.
it is as if I was just teaching this content in a breakout or something like that. But man, it was a lot. You realize it's a lot of hours to do that and go back. And somebody told me, a friend of mine that listened to it was like, there's a place where you repeated a few lines, and that's probably because I didn't delete enough back when I had to
Oh,
you know what I
okay.
mean?
Yeah.
So it was interesting doing all that, but it was fun too. And now that I've learned some of the tricks and got the right gear, it's like
Yeah.
it would be a lot smoother next time.
Nice. Well, that's cool. Well, that's good. Well, hopefully you'll be working on that next book sooner rather than later. Tell me real quick before I get you off. Talk to me about Ministry Boost. What's that all about? And how can that help people?
Yeah. We started Ministry Boost about 5 years ago. It's basically online courses, resource bundles, and coaching for church leaders, primarily kids and student pastors. We have other things like have the new digital church course, so like your audience that does church online created that during the pandemic, implemented basically everything I've learned about online marketing and online business, which we use to grow Ministry Boost and reach church leaders. Because we knew back then, even 10 years ago, it's like we're going to have to reach them online if we're going to reach them. So that's mostly what Ministry Boost is. Half of our content is probably about volunteers, recruiting, leading, training, all those things. The other half is probably specific to certain ministry areas, like building a text ministry texting strategy, kids ministry, large group, youth, new to youth ministry, all those kinds of things. And so we do all that with Ministry Boost. What's interesting is in the book, there's probably 6 or 7 courses represented in the book, where like that chapter is a course, that chapter is a course, those 3 chapters are another course. And even the volunteer playbook was a course. It was supposed to be a book when I started writing 10 years ago,
Yeah.
made a course about, I guess it'd be 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
And that was easier than writing a book, quite honestly. And so that existed for 6 years and kind of retired that now that the book is out. But that's what we do. We do coaching that always launches in January, kids, student, next gen, pastor coaching. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun working with churches. One of the things we're doing now a lot more is showing up at churches and leading their whole staff to do what we just talked about in this episode, how to recruit. And so, I'm working with a few churches where we come in, teach the framework to everybody that's going to be recruiting volunteers. And then we do coaching for 6 months to help them set up all the systems and processes to make sure that they actually do it. And, we're working with a large church out west that has, I think, 750 volunteers in Next Gen across all their campuses, because it's a large church with a lot of campuses. But they need 300 more. So they need to go from 750 to like 1,050 or something like that.
Oh my God.
And so we're trying to help. And so I did the math while we were there. It's like, okay, we're trying to help you grow your volunteer team by 43%. Let's go. Like, let's get to work. We can do it.
Dang. Well, if anybody's thinking, man, we got to grow our volunteer base, at least it's not 300 people plus. Yes.
That's where the scale matters. Like, so if you were church, you had 70 and you need 100 to be the same idea. You get 70 volunteers, you need to get to 105 or whatever. You'd be in the same boat as their church. But yeah, it is funny because it's a large, the original like location, I think, is 7,000 in attendance just by itself. And then, all the other campuses. But what's great for them, which all of us don't benefit from, but they're so large that some of the things they can work on, it's not like it's a lot of church leaders where one person has to do all of it. Like they can actually have teams. So they've got teams of like, they're working on the documents and they're working on the framework and they're working on the orientation. So it's pretty fun. And we're going to do the same thing with another church here soon. I've done this with some other churches before. And so that's been a lot of fun because it's such a weight for all of us, volunteer recruiting. And we kind of love being there, doing it with them to make sure because that's the other thing is some people, you can get the book and never actually do it. Like you can read the whole thing.
Yeah.
But if you don't do it, you're not going to get any of the results. So we love working with churches. It just increases the chance they'll actually implement the stuff.
That's awesome. And what's your website? Is it ministryboost.com?
It's ministryboost.org. Never got the .com. It used to be fun fact. And I knew the guy whose brother-in-law, I think, did this. It used to be like one of those online church media sites, I guess, where you like buy church media, like worship backgrounds or whatever. And once it died, it's one of those things where like you can't buy it anymore, or you can, but for a stupid amount of money. So ministryboost.org, volunteerplaybook.com, best places to go.
Great. Well, I'm going to encourage everyone to check it out. Nick's a great guy. He's got lots of experience, obviously. So check out his book, check out Ministry Boost, and go from there. Well, Nick, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
All right. So what did you think? What stood out to you? As I told Nick earlier, the important thing for me is not just the recruiting thing, but it really is the training and empowering them. Because if you can train them effectively, if you can empower them effectively, you're going to do and have a great impact with your volunteer team. So what does it look like for you? What did you learn? What stood out to you? Definitely put it in the comment section below, or you can email me anytime at tom@thechurch.digital. I would love to talk to you a little bit more about this today. You can also hit me up on Twitter at @TAPounder is my Twitter handle. I would love to talk to you and see again what that looks like for you today. All right, heroes. Well, thanks so much for joining me today. As always, if you enjoyed the podcast, subscribe to it. It's on YouTube. It's on Apple. It's on Google. It's on all the platforms. Go to your favorite one, subscribe to it, so you can get these every time they come out. I would love for you to be able to do that. All right, well, I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week. And until next time, have a great one.